Jake Thompson stood at the spaceport, looking at his ticket. Gate 47B, the paper said. He was tired after working double shifts at the mining colony for 6 months. All he wanted was to get home to Earth. The spaceport was huge and confusing. Ships of all sizes filled the docking bays. Jake walked past Gate 47A and saw Gate 47B ahead. Or at least he thought he did. His eyes were heavy from lack of sleep. He showed his ticket to the boarding scanner. It beeped green. Strange, he thought. The scanner looked different from usual. But he was too tired to care. He just wanted to find his seat and sleep for the whole journey. The ship's entrance was wider than normal passenger ships. The walls had a strange purple shine to them. The air smelled different too, like cinnamon mixed with something metallic. Jake dragged his bag down the corridor, looking for seat 23C. But there were no seats. Instead, he found himself in a massive, open chamber. The ceiling stretched up so high he could barely see it. Glowing crystals lined the walls, casting soft light everywhere. This definitely wasn't a normal passenger ship. Excuse me. Jake called out. His voice echoed in the empty space. I think I'm lost. Where are the passenger seats? A deep rumbling sound answered him. It wasn't quite a growl, but it made the hair on his arms stand up. Jake turned around slowly. Standing in the doorway was a creature he had only seen in old Earth legends. It was a dragon. But not just any dragon. This one stood on 2 legs like a person, wore a uniform with strange symbols, and was definitely female based on the elegant features and the way she moved. The dragon was about 8 feet tall with scales that shimmered between red and gold. Her eyes were like molten amber, studying Jake with an expression he couldn't read. She had wings folded against her back, and a long tail that swayed slightly as she tilted her head. A human, she said. Her voice was like controlled thunder. A male human. On our ship. Jake's mouth went dry. I think I made a mistake. Wrong ship. I'll just go dash no, the dragon said, stepping forward. Each step made the floor vibrate slightly. You cannot leave now. We have already departed. Jake felt his stomach drop. He ran to the nearest window and saw the stars streaking by in the familiar pattern of faster-than-light travel. They had left the spaceport without him even noticing. But I need to get to Earth, Jake said. This is just a mistake. Can't you turn around? The dragon made a sound that might have been laughter. Turn around? Do you know how much energy it takes to stop a ship in hyperspace? Besides, we have not had a human on board in a very long time. More footsteps echoed in the chamber. Jake turned to see 3 more dragon women entering. One had scales of deep blue, another was emerald green, and the third was pure silver. They all wore similar uniforms and moved with a grace that seemed impossible for creatures so large. Kyra, what is this? The silver one asked. Why is there a human male in the meditation chamber? The red gold dragon, apparently named Kyra, gestured at Jake. He boarded at the last stop. Has a valid ticket. Impossible, the blue dragon said. Our ship is not on any human transport routes. Jake pulled out his ticket, hands shaking slightly. Look, I'm supposed to be on the Stellar Express to Earth. Gate 47B. See, the green dragon took the ticket, examining it with eyes that seemed to see more than just paper and ink. Interesting. The gate numbers at that spaceport were changed last week due to construction. Gate 47B became Gate 48B. Our ship was at the original 47B. So it really is just a mistake, Jake said hopefully. Can you drop me off at the next stop? The 4 dragons exchanged looks. It was the kind of look that said they were having a conversation without words. Jake had seen similar expressions on his sister and her friends when they were plotting something. The next stop, Kyra said slowly, is the Dragon Confederation capital. For months from here. For months. Jake's voice cracked. I can't be gone for 4 months. I have a job, an apartment, a cat. The silver dragon stepped forward. She seemed to be the oldest of the group, with small scars on her scales that spoke of many years of experience. I'm Captain Ethra. This is my ship, the Crimson Wing. You are the first human to board a dragon vessel in over 50 years. Congratulations, Jake said weakly. Captain Ethra smiled, showing teeth that were thankfully not as sharp as he expected. You present us with an interesting situation, Jake Thompson. How do you know my name? The ticket, she said simply. The question is what to do with you. The blue dragon spoke up. Protocol says any unauthorized passengers should be put in the brig. He's not unauthorized, Kyra argued. He has a valid ticket. It's not his fault the gates were mislabeled. Still, the green dragon said, a human male on a ship full of female dragons? The crew will be curious. Jake didn't like the way she said curious. It reminded him of how scientists looked at specimens under a microscope. Captain Ethra raised a clawed hand for silence. We cannot turn back, and we cannot put him off the ship until we reach port. Therefore, he stays as our guest. Guest? All three younger dragons said at once. Guest, the captain confirmed. Sarana, she addressed the green dragon. Prepare quarters for him. Something appropriate for human needs. But Captain Sarana started. Mira, the captain continued, looking at the blue dragon. Inform the crew we have a human guest. Make it clear he is under my protection. Mira nodded reluctantly. And Kra, the captain turned to the red gold dragon who had found him. You will be his guide. Help him adjust to life on our ship. Kyra's eyes widened. Me? But Captain, I don't know anything about humans. Then, you'll learn together, Captain Ethra said with what Jake was starting to recognize as dragon amusement. Consider it a cultural exchange. Jake raised his hand like he was in school. Do I get a say in this? All four dragons turned to look at him. The weight of their gazes was almost physical. Of course, Captain Ethra said. You can accept our hospitality for the next 4 months, or you can spend them in the brig. Your choice. That's not much of a choice, Jake muttered. No, the captain agreed. It's not. Jake looked around the chamber, at the alien beauty of the ship, at the 4 dragon women who held his fate in their clawed hands. He thought about Earth, about his small apartment, and his boring job at the mining company's administrative office. When would he ever get a chance like this again? Fine, he said. I accept your hospitality, but I want to send a message to Earth. Let them know I'm okay. That can be arranged, the captain said. Kyra will show you to your quarters. Dinner is in 3 hours. Dragon time. How long is an hour in dragon time? About 70 of your minutes, Kyra supplied helpfully. The captain and the other 2 dragons left, their tails swishing as they walked. Jake was left alone with Kyra, who was studying him like he was a particularly interesting puzzle. So, Jake said, trying to break the awkward silence. Come here often? Kyra blinked. This is my ship. I live here. It was a joke, Jake explained. Human humor. Oh, Kyra tilted her head. Was it funny? Not really, no. Then, why did you say it? Jake sighed. This was going to be a long 4 months. Never mind. Can you show me to my room? Kyra nodded and started walking. Jake had to jog to keep up with her longer strides. The corridors of the ship were wide and tall, designed for creatures with wings and tails. Everything was scaled up, making Jake feel like a child in an adult's world. Can I ask you something? Jake said as they walked. You just did, Kyra pointed out. Right. Can I ask you something else? Yes. Why hasn't a human been on a dragon ship in 50 years? Kyra was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer. There was a war. Not a big one, but enough. Dragons and humans decided it was better to keep to our own territories after that. But we're at peace now, right? Yes. But old habits are hard to break. Your people stay on your ships, we stay on ours. Until today, Jake said. Until today, Kyra agreed. She stopped at a door that looked like all the others. Here are your quarters. She pressed her hand against a panel, and the door slid open. Jake stepped inside and stopped in surprise. The room was huge by human standards. The ceiling was 20 feet high, with a sleeping platform that could have fit 10 humans comfortably. There was a workspace with a chair that looked hilariously oversized, and what he assumed was a bathroom area behind another door. Is this a closet or something? Jake asked. This is a standard guest room, Kyra said, sounding offended. Is it not adequate? It's bigger than my entire apartment, Jake admitted. Kyra looked pleased. Good. The hygiene facilities have been modified for human use. The computer terminal should work with your language. If you need anything, press the communication button and ask for me. Wait, Jake said as she turned to leave. What am I supposed to do for 4 months? Kyra paused at the door. Whatever you want. You're our guest, not our prisoner. But I don't know anyone. I don't know your customs. What if I offend someone? Then you'll learn, Kyra said. Just like we'll learn about humans. She smiled, and this time it didn't look quite so intimidating. Don't worry, Jake Thompson. Dragons are curious creatures. Once the crew gets over the shock, they'll probably want to ask you 1,000 questions. That's what I'm afraid of, Jake muttered. Kyra laughed. a sound like distant thunder. Rest now. I'll return for you at dinner. Try not to think of us as scary dragons who might eat you. Do you eat humans? Not for centuries, Kyra said. Then, just as Jake was relaxing, she added, we're mostly vegetarian now. She left before Jake could ask what mostly meant. Jake sat on the enormous bed, his head spinning. 6 hours ago, he had been a normal human heading home after a mining contract. Now, he was the only human on a ship full of female dragons, heading to a planet he'd never heard of and apparently serving as an impromptu cultural ambassador. He pulled out his communication device and started composing a message to Earth. How did you explain something like this? Hey boss, I'll be 4 months late to work because I accidentally got on a dragon ship. Didn't sound believable even to him. As he typed, he heard sound from outside his room. Footsteps, lots of them, and voices speaking in a language that sounded like controlled roars and musical growls. The news of his presence was spreading through the ship. Jake finished his message and sent it, hoping it would reach Earth eventually. Then he lay back on the giant bed and stared at the ceiling. 4 months with dragons. Female dragons who seemed both curious and protective of him. It was either going to be the adventure of a lifetime or the longest 4 months in human history. Probably both, Jake thought as he closed his eyes. Definitely both. The dinner chime sounded exactly 3 hours and 30 minutes later, just as Kyra had promised. Jake had spent the time exploring his quarters and trying to figure out the computer terminal. Everything was built for creatures with claws instead of fingers, which made typing an adventure. Kyra arrived at his door, wearing what looked like a more formal version of her uniform. The scales on her face and neck seemed extra polished. Ready for dinner? She asked. As ready as I can be, Jake said. Any advice? Don't stare at anyone's horde marks, don't comment on tail length, and whatever you do, don't refuse food that's offered to you. Horde marks. Kyra gestured to a series of intricate scars on her left arm. These show our accomplishments. Very personal. Staring is like looking through someone's private messages. Got it. No staring at scars. Good. Follow me and stay close. The crew is very excited to meet you. Jake followed her through corridors that seemed even more massive than before. Dragons passed them going the other direction, and every single one stopped to stare. Some were subtle about it, glancing from the corners of their eyes. Others just stood there, mouths slightly open, watching him walk by. Is it just me? Jake whispered. Or are they all female? This is an all-female crew, Kyra confirmed. Dragon tradition. Female crews for exploration ships. Male crews for defense ships. Why? Females are more curious and diplomatic. Males are more aggressive. They reached a massive set of doors decorated with carved images of dragons in flight. Kyra paused with her hand on the door control. The entire senior crew will be there, she said. About 30 dragons. They've been ordered to be polite, but they're still very curious. Just be yourself. Myself is currently terrified, Jake admitted. Kyra made that thunder laugh sound again. Good. Honesty is valued among dragons. Ready. Before Jake could say no, she opened the doors. The dining hall took Jake's breath away. It was like a cavern made of polished metal and crystal, with a ceiling that showed a view of space. Long tables filled the room, but instead of chairs, there were platforms where dragons could stand or recline while eating. And there were dragons everywhere. All female, all in uniform, all suddenly, very quiet as they turned to look at him. Jake felt like a mouse that had wandered into a cat convention. If the cats were the size of small buildings and breathed fire. Captain Ethera stood at the head table. She raised a glass filled with something that glowed blue. Crew of the Crimson Wing, I present our guest, Jake Thompson of Earth. A murmur ran through the room. Not hostile, but definitely interested. Jake gave an awkward wave. Hi, he said, his voice sounding very small in the massive space. The murmur grew louder. Several dragons in the back stood up to get a better look. Come, the captain said. You'll sit at the command table tonight. Kyra guided Jake to the front of the room. He was acutely aware of dozens of eyes following his every move. The command table had one platform that had been hastily modified with what looked like a human-sized chair and table setting. Jake sat between Kyra and a dragon he hadn't met yet. This one had scales of deep purple with silver highlights. She leaned down to look at him more closely. Incredible, she said. So small, yet your species builds ships that rival ours. I'm Vex, chief engineer. Nice to meet you, Jake said, trying not to stare at her teeth. Is it true, Vex continued, that humans only live for about 100 years? Give or take, yeah. Fascinating. We live for 600, sometimes more. How do you accomplish anything in such a short time? We work fast, Jake suggested. More dragons joined the conversation, each with questions. What do humans eat? Everything. How do they fly without wings? Machines. Was it true they could only see a limited spectrum of colors? Probably, though Jake wasn't sure what dragons could see. The food arrived, carried by younger dragons who stared at Jake with undisguised curiosity. His plate was smaller than the others, but still held enough food for 3 humans. It looked like various vegetables and fruits, some familiar and some definitely alien. No meat, Jake asked. We save meat for special occasions, Captain Ethra explained. Despite the old stories, dragons don't actually need to eat cattle every day. That's reassuring. Jake tried a bit of everything. Some dishes were surprisingly good. A fruit that tasted like spiced apples, a vegetable that had the texture of pasta. Others were definitely acquired tastes, like the purple root that numbed his tongue. As he ate, the questions continued. The dragons wanted to know everything. How did human government work? What were their mating customs? Did they really change colors when embarrassed? Only a little, Jake said, feeling his cheeks heat up as 30 dragons leaned in to observe the phenomenon. Remarkable, said a dragon with scales like burnished copper. They do change color, just like the old text said. What exactly do these old texts say about humans? Jake asked. The dragons exchanged glances. Finally, Mira, the blue dragon from earlier, spoke up. They say humans are clever and adaptable, that they can survive anywhere and befriend anyone, but also that they're fragile and must be handled carefully. Like pets? Jake asked, not liking where this was going. No, Captain Ethra said firmly. Like guests, which is what you are. A younger dragon at a nearby table raised her hand. Can I ask a question? Go ahead, the captain said. The young dragon looked at Jake with eyes that practically sparkled. Is it true that humans can bond with any species? The texts say you keep animals in your homes and treat them like family. We have pets, yes, Jake said. I have a cat named Schrödinger. What's a cat? Several dragons asked at once. Jake spent the next 10 minutes trying to explain cats to a room full of dragons. Their expressions range from confusion to delight. So it's a tiny predator that lives in your home and ignores you? Vex summarized. Pretty much, yeah. And you feed it and care for it even though it provides no practical benefit? Well, when you put it like that, humans are strange, Vex concluded, but she was smiling. As the meal continued, Jake found himself relaxing. The dragons were intimidating in size and appearance, but their curiosity was genuine and oddly endearing. They laughed at his jokes once he explained them, shared stories of their own travels, and seemed genuinely interested in learning about human culture. Can I show them? Kyra asked suddenly. Jake had no idea what she meant until she pulled out a small device. His communication pad. You took my pad? Borrowed, Kyra corrected. I wanted to understand human entertainment. This movie thing is fascinating. She projected an image on the wall, a scene from an action movie Jake had downloaded for the trip. The dragons watched with rapt attention as humans on screen fought against alien invaders. Is this historical documentation? One dragon asked. No, it's fiction, Jake explained. Made up for entertainment. Humans imagine fighting aliens for fun. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds weird. Everything about humans sounds weird, Vex said cheerfully. That's what makes you interesting. The movie scene ended with humanity victorious, as always. The dragon seemed impressed and slightly amused. In our fiction, Captain Ethra said, dragons usually win. I like to see that, Jake said. Perhaps we can arrange a cultural exchange, the captain suggested. Your movie's for ours. As dinner ended, dragons began approaching Jake individually. Each had questions or just want a closer look. A navigation officer asked about Earth's oceans. A weapons specialist wanted to know about human warfare. Jake diplomatically changed the subject. A young engineer shyly asked if she could touch his hair, having never seen anything like it. It's so soft, she marveled, carefully running a claw through Jake's brown hair. Like plant fibers, but alive. Dragon hair would probably be more practical, Jake said. We don't have hair. Just scales and sometimes feathers. Feathers. The engineer spread her wings slightly, showing the fine, feather-like scales along the edges. For silent flight, though we don't fly much on ships. By the time Kyra escorted him back to his quarters, Jake had met at least 40 dragons, answered hundreds of questions, and learned more about dragon culture than any human in 50 years. That went well, Kyra said as they walked. I feel like I just gave a presentation to the most attentive audience in the galaxy. Dragons love learning new things. It's why we explore. They reached his door, but Jake wasn't quite ready to be alone yet. Kyra, can I ask you something? Of course. Why are you all being so nice to me? I mean, I literally stumbled onto your ship by accident. You could have thrown me in the brig like Mira suggested. Kyra was quiet for a moment, her tail swishing thoughtfully. Can I tell you a secret? Sure. We're lonely. Jake blinked. Lonely? You have a whole crew. I mean, as a species. We've kept to ourselves for 50 years. No contact with humans, limited contact with other races. We tell ourselves it's for safety, for tradition. But really? We miss you. You miss humans? Dragons and humans worked together for centuries on Earth before we left for the stars. We were partners, friends, sometimes more. Then the war happened and we separated. But we still tell stories about the days when dragons and humans flew together. Jake thought about all the questions at dinner, the genuine excitement in their voices. So, I'm like a reminder of better times? Your hope, Kyra said simply. Hope that maybe we can be friends again. Jake felt a weight settle on his shoulders. He thought he was just an accidental passenger. Now he was apparently an ambassador for his entire species. No pressure, right? He said weakly. Kyra laughed. Get some rest. Tomorrow I'll show you around the ship properly. The crew will want to know everything about current human culture. Everything. Everything. Music, art, technology, mating rituals, dash. Maybe not that last one. Especially that last one. Dragons are very curious about how species with such short lives manage reproduction. Jake groaned. This is going to be a long 4 months. Or a very short one, depending on perspective, Kyra said philosophically. Good night, Jake Thompson. As she left, Jake realized something. He'd been on the ship for less than a day, and already he was starting to see the dragons as individuals rather than scary aliens. Kyra with her curiosity and dry humor. Captain Ethera with her wisdom and authority. Vex with her engineer's mind and constant questions. He messaged Earth again, updating his earlier panic message. Situation stable. Dragons friendly. May have accidentally become cultural ambassador. Please feed my cat. Then he collapsed on the oversized bed, exhausted but oddly exhilarated. Tomorrow he'd get a tour of an actual dragon starship. How many humans could say that? As he drifted off to sleep, he heard the ship humming around him, a deep, resonant sound that was almost like purring. Dragons, he decided, were nothing like the stories. Jake woke to the sound of chiming. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then he saw the 20-foot ceiling and remembered Dragon's ship. The door chimed again. Come in, he called, sitting up. Kyra entered carrying what looked like a breakfast tray scale for someone twice Jake's size. Good morning. I brought human-appropriate food. How do you know what's human-appropriate? I researched all night, she said proudly. Your information networks are fascinating. Did you know humans have created thousands of breakfast variations? She set the tray down. Jake examined the contents. Something that looked like eggs, possibly bread, and a fruit that might have been an apple if apples were blue. Close enough, he said, digging in. So what's on the agenda today? Ship tour as promised. But first, the captain wants to see you. Am I in trouble? No. But overnight, 3 other dragon ships contacted us. Word has spread about our human guest. Jake nearly choked on his maybe eggs. How many dragon ships are out here? In this sector? About 40. In total? Thousands. And they all know about me. News travels fast among dragons. We're very social creatures, despite appearances. After breakfast, Kyra led him to the captain's ready room. It was smaller than he expected, which meant it was only the size of a large human conference room instead of a stadium. Captain Ethera was studying multiple holographic displays. She turned as they entered, her silver scales catching the light. Jake, I hope you slept well. Like a baby, Jake said then, realized he'd have to explain that expression later. Good. We have a situation. 3 dragon ships have requested to rendezvous with us. They want to meet you. Is that normal? Nothing about this is normal, the captain said with amusement. I've given them permission to send representatives. They'll arrive tomorrow. So, I'll be meeting more dragons? Many more. I hope that's acceptable. Jake thought about it. He was already the only human on one dragon ship. What difference would a few more make? Sure, but I have a condition. Both dragons tilted their heads, a gesture Jake was beginning to recognize as curiosity. I want to learn about dragon culture too. Real culture, not just the formal stuff. How you live, what you do for fun, your history. Fair exchange. Captain Etheris smiled. I think that can be arranged. Kyra, expand the tour to include cultural sites. Cultural sites on a spaceship? Jake asked. You'll see, Kyra said mysteriously. The tour started in engineering. Vex was waiting for them, practically bouncing with excitement despite her massive size. Human Jake, she called out. Perfect timing. I want to show you our engines. The engine room was beyond anything Jake had imagined. Massive crystals hummed with energy, connected by channels that looked more grown than built. It was like being inside a living organism. Dragon technology is partially organic, Vex explained. We grow our ships as much as build them. Each one is unique. You grow spaceships? Why not? Living things are more adaptable than pure machines. Though I admit, your human approach has its merits. Very efficient. She showed him around, explaining systems that seemed to blend science and something close to magic. Jake took mental notes, knowing Earth scientists would lose their minds over this information. Next was the medical bay, run by a dragon named Silent with scales of pale green and gold. She was older than most of the crew, with a calm demeanor that reminded Jake of his grandmother. A human, she exclaimed. Do you mind if I scan you? For medical knowledge only. I promise it won't hurt. Jake submitted to a scan that involved standing in a circle of floating crystals. Silent studied the results with fascination. Incredible. Your neural pathways are so different from ours. How do you think so quickly with such small brains? We manage, Jake said dryly. And your healing rate, so fast compared to us. But your lifespan, how do you cope with such mortality? We try not to think about it too much. Silent showed him dragon medical equipment, explaining how their healing process worked. Dragons, it turned out, could regrow entire limbs given enough time and energy. Must be nice, Jake said, thinking of his bad knee from a mining accident. It has its drawbacks. The process takes years and is quite painful. Your human method of quick healing, even if imperfect, has advantages. The armory was next, overseen by a scarred dragon named Thex. She had more horde marks than anyone Jake had seen, telling stories of battles and victories. Human weapons are so small, she mused, showing Jake a dragon-sized pulse rifle. But effective. We've studied your military history. Very creative in your destruction. Thanks. It's a compliment. Dragons préfèrent direct combat. Humans use tactics, strategy, deception. You win battles you should lose. We're good at being sneaky, Jake admitted. Yes, exactly. Dragons are many things, but subtle isn't one of them. Thex let Jake hold a training weapon, a staff that would have been a small stick to her, but was perfect for his size. She showed him basic dragon combat moves, laughing when he tried to copy them. You're like a hatchling, she said fondly. All enthusiasm, no technique. I'll stick to running away, Jake said, handing the staff back. Also a valid strategy. Very human. The recreation area surprised Jake the most. It was a massive space with multiple levels, filled with dragons engaged in various activities. Some were playing what looked like three-dimensional chess with holographic pieces. Others were creating art with tools that painted with light. Dragons play games? Jake asked. Of course, Kyra said. We're not always serious. Look there. She pointed to a group of younger dragons watching something on a large screen and laughing. As they got closer, Jake realized they were watching the human movie from his pad. Is that a comedy? Your human humor is very strange, one of the dragons said, noticing them. They fall down, and it's funny. What? Physical comedy is universal, apparently, Jake said. Can we watch more? Kyra won't share the device. It's not mine to share, Kyra protested. Jake spent the next hour explaining human humor to increasingly amused dragons. They especially loved slapstick and wordplay, though puns needed extensive translation. The ship's library was a wonder. Not books, but crystalline storage devices that projected information directly into the reader's mind. Jake couldn't use them properly, but Kyra translated, showing him dragon literature. "This is our most famous epic," she said, projecting images. "The flame of first flight. About the first dragon to leave our homeworld. When was that? 3,000 years ago. We've been exploring ever since. And you still haven't seen everything? The universe is vast, Jake Thompson. There's always more to discover." They visited the observation deck next, a bubble of transparent material that offered an unobstructed view of space. Jake stood there, mesmerized by the stars streaking past. "It never gets old," a new voice said. Jake turned to find a dragon he hadn't met. This one with scales that shifted color from blue to purple to black, like oil on water. "I'm Zara," she said. "Navigator. I heard we had a human aboard. Word really does travel fast." "Dragons gossip worse than anyone," Zara admitted. "Is it true you navigated by the stars before you had computers?" "Our ancestors did, yes." "Remarkable. Using such primitive tools to find your way. We've always had the star sense." "Star sense." Zara touched her head. "Dragons can feel stellar positions. It's how we navigate in deep space. But humans had to learn to build tools to think. In some ways, that's more impressive." As the day continued, Jake met more dragons. The ship's counselor, who was fascinated by human psychology. The quartermaster, who wanted to know about human resource management. Even the janitor, who was amazed that humans cleaned without tails to help. "Your tails are that useful?" Jake asked. "Watch," Kyra said. She picked up 3 objects with her tail, while her hands worked on something else. "Extra limb. Very handy. I can see that." By lunch, served in a smaller dining room this time, Jake was exhausted but exhilarated. He learned more about dragons in one morning than humans had known in 50 years. "Can I ask something?" he said between bites of something that tasted like spice carrots. "Always," Kyra replied. "Why did you leave Earth?" "The real reason, not the official one." The dragons at the table exchanged glances. Finally, Kyra spoke. "We were becoming too human." Jake frowned. "What do you mean?" "Dragons who lived near humans started thinking like humans. Short-term planning, individual focus over clan, quick decisions instead of careful thought. Some saw it as evolution. Others saw it as losing our identity. So you left to stay dragons?" "Yes, but maybe we went too far the other way. Maybe there's a balance." "Maybe," Jake agreed. After lunch, Kyra took him to what she called the memory room. It was a spherical chamber with walls that could project 3-dimensional images from dragon history. "This is our culture," she said, activating the system. Images swirled around them. Dragons in flight over alien worlds. Great gatherings where thousands met to share knowledge. Art and music unlike anything on Earth. "It's beautiful," Jake breathed. "This is why we explore," Kyra said. "To find beauty, to learn, to add to our collective memory." She showed him more. Dragon colonies on distant worlds, their first contact with other species, their achievements and failures. Jake began to understand that dragons weren't just large, powerful creatures. They were poets and scientists, artists and warriors, all driven by an insatiable curiosity about the universe. "Now you," Kyra said. "Tell me about human culture." Jake talked about Earth, its cities and wilderness, its billions of different people all finding different ways to live. He talked about human art and music, their dreams and fears, their short lives packed with intensity. "You burn bright," Kyra murmured. "Like stars. Short-lived, but brilliant. Is that how dragons see us?" "It's how I see you," she said then, seemed embarrassed. "I mean, humans in general." As the day ended, Jake found himself in the observation deck again. This time he wasn't alone. A dozen dragons had joined him, all wanting to hear about Earth. He talked until his throat was sore, answering questions and sharing stories. The dragons listened with rapt attention, occasionally asking for clarification or more details. "Your world sounds chaotic," Vex said. "So many people, so many different ways of thinking." "It is chaotic," Jake agreed. "But that's what makes it interesting." "Like you," a young dragon said shyly. "You're very interesting." "Thanks, I think." As the dragons dispersed for their night shifts, Kyra walked Jake back to his quarters. "Tomorrow will be intense," she warned. 3 ships worth of dragons wanting to meet you. I'll try not to disappoint them." You couldn't, Kyra said with certainty. You're already exceeding all expectations. How so? You're not afraid of us anymore. Jake realized she was right. Somewhere between breakfast and now, he'd stopped seeing the dragons as intimidating aliens and started seeing them as people. Different people, but people nonetheless. You're not that scary once you get to know you, he said. Don't let that get out. We have a reputation to maintain. As Jake settled in a bed that night, he thought about everything he'd learned. Dragons were nothing like human stories portrayed them. They were better. Complex, curious, creative beings who had chosen isolation out of fear of losing themselves. Maybe, just maybe, his accidental boarding could help both species find their way back to each other. His communication pad beeped. Another message from Earth had arrived. His boss was furious about his absence. His landlord was threatening eviction. His sister was worried. Jake looked at the messages, then at the view of stars from his window. He thought about Kyra's laugh, Vex's enthusiasm, Captain Ethra's wisdom. He thought about tomorrow and meeting dragons from other ships. He typed a simple reply, having the adventure of a lifetime. We'll explain everything when I get back. Please take care of my cat. Then he turned off the pad and went to sleep, dreaming of dragons and stars and the bridges that could be built between species who had been apart too long. Jake woke early, nervous energy making sleep impossible. Today he'd meet dragons from 3 other ships. No pressure, just representing his entire species to aliens who hadn't seen a human in decades. He was still getting dressed when his door chimed. Kyra entered with breakfast and an expression he was starting to recognize as dragon anxiety. They're here, she said. All 3 ships arrived during the night cycle. How many dragons are we talking about? Each ship sent 5 representatives. So 15 new dragons, plus our crew who all want to be present. The main hall is being prepared. Jake's stomach did a flip. Any advice? Be yourself. That's what impressed our crew. She paused. Also, one of the ships is a military vessel. Their dragons might be more traditional. Traditional how? They might see humans as prey species. Old instincts. Don't take it personally. Don't take being seen as food personally. Got it. After breakfast, Kyra led him to get properly dressed. The dragons had created clothes for him, a modified uniform that somehow made him look both human and officially part of the crew. You look good, Kyra said, then quickly added, professionally speaking. The main hall was packed. Jake had thought dinner on his first night was crowded, but this was something else. Dragons filled every available space, their scales creating a rainbow of colors. The noise of their conversations created a rumbling thunder. It all stopped when Jake entered. Breathe, Kyra whispered beside him. Captain Ethra stood at the center of the room with 3 other dragons who were obviously ship captains. One was massive, even by dragon standards, with black scales that seemed to absorb light. Another was sleek and golden. The third had scales that looked like living flame. Captains, Ethra said formally, I present Jake Thompson of Earth, guest of the Crimson Wing. The black-scaled captains stepped forward. Each step shook the floor. This dragon was built for war, scarred, powerful with eyes like ice. So small, the captain rumbled. This is what we've avoided for 50 years. Captain Corax, Ethra said with warning in her voice. Corax lowered his massive head until he was eye level with Jake. Tell me, human, why shouldn't I see you as prey? Jake's heart hammered, but he forced himself to meet those ice-cold eyes. Because prey runs, and I'm still standing here. Silence. Then Corax laughed, a sound like an avalanche. Brave. Stupid but brave. I like this one. The golden captain approached next, moving with dancer's grace. I'm Lyria of the Solar Dream. We're an exploration vessel. My crew has many questions about human adaptability. I'll answer what I can, Jake said. The flame-scaled captain was last. Pyra of the Star Forge. We're engineers. I want to know how human technology works without organic components. We make do with metal and electricity, Jake said. Fascinating. We must discuss this. The formal introductions continued as each ship's representatives came forward. Jake met scientists, warriors, artists, and philosophers. Each had questions, observations, or simple curiosity about the human in their midst. One dragon, introduced as a xenobiologist, actually took notes as she observed him. Bipedal locomotion with no tail for balance. How do you not fall over constantly? Practice, Jake said. And we do fall over. We just get back up. Resilient, she noted approvingly. A warrior from Korax's ship challenged Jake to show human combat abilities. Jake politely declined. Scared, the warrior taunted. Sensible, Jake corrected. You're 8 feet tall with claws and centuries of training. I'm 5'10" with soft hands and a bad knee. That's not a fight, it's a physics demonstration. Then, show us how humans fight when outmatched. Jake thought for a moment. Kyra, can I borrow your data pad? She handed it over, curious. Jake pulled up videos of human innovation, tools, traps, tactics. He showed them humans using intelligence over strength, cooperation over individual power. We don't fight dragons, Jake explained. We figure out how not to fight dragons. That's how we survive. The warrior looked thoughtful. Kumba without kumba. Clever. The questions continued for hours. Dragons wanted to know about human families, small but close, human art, incredibly diverse, human science, advancing rapidly despite short lives, and human philosophy, complicated and contradictory. How do you make decisions with such short lives? Asked the dragon philosopher. You have no time for proper contemplation. We guess a lot, Jake admitted. Sometimes we're wrong, but we learn from mistakes and pass that knowledge on. Generational learning rather than individual mastery, the philosopher mused. Inefficient but effective. During a break, Jake found himself cornered by a group of younger dragons from the various ships. They were less formal than their elders, more openly curious. Is it true humans bond with everything? One asked. Pretty much, Jake said. We pack bond with anything that doesn't try to eat us. Sometimes even things that do. Show us. Jake looked around the room, spotted a cleaning drone hovering nearby. It was a simple machine, but he approached it slowly, speaking softly. Hey buddy, working hard? Good job. You missed a spot over there. The drone, responding to his voice, moved toward the indicated area. Jake patted its chassis gently. See? Give us 5 minutes, and we'll bond with the cleaning robot. The young dragons were delighted. Do it with us. You want me to bond with you? Yes. Show us how humans make friends. Jake looked at the eager faces surrounding him. Well, first, what are your names? They introduced themselves: Star, Mist, Echo, Ember, and Cloud. Jake repeated each name, making eye contact. Nice to meet you all. So, Star, I notice your scales have an interesting pattern. Natural or designed? Star preened. Natural. My clutch family all have stellar patterns. That's amazing. And, Mist, you move differently from the others. Dancer? How did you know? The way you shift your weight. Very graceful. He continued with each dragon, finding something specific to notice and compliment. Within minutes, they were chatting like old friends. This is bonding, Echo asked. Just talking and noticing things? Part of it, Jake said. Humans are social creatures. We survive by making connections. We want to bond more. Ember declared. Teach us human games. Jake taught them rock, paper, scissors, which was hilarious with dragons trying to make fists with clawed hands. Then, thumb wrestling, which they couldn't quite manage but enjoyed attempting. Other dragons, seeing the younger ones laughing, drifted closer. Soon Jake was explaining human children's games to a crowd of fascinated aliens. Red light, green light was a hit, though dragons had trouble with the sudden stops. Simon Says worked better, especially when Jake let them take turns being Simon. Captain Korax watched from across the room. Your human is corrupting our youth, he said to Captain Ethera. Is that disapproval I hear? Hardly. They haven't laughed like that in years. Whatever magic humans have, it's effective. The formal gathering resumed with demonstrations. The dragons showed Jake their technology, their art, their music. In return, Jake shared what he could of human culture from his datapad. Your music is so fast, a dragon musician noted. Our span's hours. Yours is minutes. We have longer pieces too, Jake said, playing some classical music. But, yes, we tend toward shorter attention spans. Because of your lifespans? Probably. When you only have 80 years, you don't want to spend 4 of them listening to one song. I got a laugh from everyone. As the day progressed, Jake noticed the dragons from different ships starting to mingle more. His presence had become an excuse for them to interact in ways they normally wouldn't. You're a catalyst, Captain Lyria observed. Dragons are gathering because of you, but we're connecting with each other. Is that good? Very good. We've been too isolated, even from our own kind. During another break, Kyra pulled Jake aside. You're doing amazingly. I feel like a circus performer. A what? Never mind. Earth thing. Several dragons have asked about you, Kyra said, her tail swishing in what Jake now knew was agitation. Asked what? If you're claimed. Jake blinked. Claimed? It's complicated. Dragons form bonds. So I want to know if you're available for bonding. Like friendship. Or more, Kyra said, not meeting his eyes. Before Jake could process that, Vex appeared. Jake, the engineers want to see your datapad. We promise not to break it. The engineering discussion that followed was beyond Jake's understanding, but he translated what he could. The dragon engineers were fascinated by human digital technology, so different from their crystal-based systems. You store information in electrical patterns? Pyra asked. No physical matrix? Just ones and zeros, Jake confirmed. Brilliant. Fragile, but brilliant. As evening approached, the formal gathering began to wind down. Dragons exchanged information, made plans to meet again, discussed possibilities for future cooperation. This has been unprecedented, Captain Ethra announced. 4 ships gathering in peace to learn about humanity. Jake Thompson, you've given us much to think about. Happy to help, Jake said, exhausted but pleased. Captain Korax approached one last time. Human, you've surprised me. I came here expecting to find weakness. Instead, I find strength of a different kind. Thank you. When you return to Earth, tell them the dragons remember. Tell them we're not enemies anymore. I will. As the visiting dragons prepared to leave, many stopped to say goodbye to Jake personally. He shook claws, exchanged human handshakes he'd taught them, and promised to share more cultural information through the ship's communication systems. Young Star ran up and hugged him, carefully, mindful of her strength. Will we see you again? I hope so, Jake said, meaning it. The other young dragons joined the hug, creating a pile of scales and warmth that left Jake laughing and breathless. Our human is breaking protocol, someone observed. Good, Captain Ethra said. Protocol needed breaking. After the visitors left, the Crimson Wing crew lingered. The formal distance of the first day was gone. Dragons approached Jake freely now, chatting and joking. You've changed things, Silent the Medic said. This ship feels different. Lighter. All I did was be human, Jake said. Exactly. You reminded us that connection doesn't require similarity. As the crowd dispersed, Kyra walked Jake back to his quarters. They were both quiet, processing the intense day. Those dragons who asked about me, Jake said finally. What did you tell them? Kyra's scales shifted color slightly. Embarrassment, Jake had learned. I told them you weren't available. Why? Because you're our human. The Crimson Wing found you first. Jake stopped walking. Kyra, are you claiming me? Her scales shifted through several colors. That is, dragons don't, would that be acceptable? Jake thought about the past few days. Kyra had been his constant companion, his guide, his protector. She'd gone out of her way to make him comfortable, to learn about humans, to bridge 2 cultures. You know what? Jake said. Yeah, that would be acceptable. Kyra's whole body seemed to light up. Really? But you'll have to explain what claiming means exactly. Human dating is probably different. Dating? Kyra asked, then her eyes widened. Oh, no, claiming isn't. Well, it could be, but it doesn't have to. It's complicated. Jake laughed. Everything with dragons is complicated. We'll figure it out. They reached his quarters, both feeling the shift in their relationship. Whatever claiming meant, something had changed between them. Jake, Kyra said as he opened his door. Thank you. For today. For everything. You've given us back something we lost. What's that? Hope. And maybe friendship with humans again. As Jake settled into bed that night, he thought about the day. He'd met dozens of dragons, played children's games with warriors, discussed philosophy with engineers, and apparently been claimed by Kyra, whatever that meant. For months suddenly, didn't seem like nearly enough time. 2 months had passed since Jake accidentally boarded the Crimson Wing. What had started as a terrifying mistake had become the adventure of a lifetime. He'd settled into a routine. Morning language lessons with the communication officer, engineering discussions with Vex, cultural exchange sessions with various crew members, and evenings with Kyra. The claiming thing had turned out to be less complicated than he'd feared. It was partly romantic, partly protective, partly partnership. Kyra explained it as dragons choosing someone to be especially close to guard, to learn from, to trust completely. So, we're dating? Jake had asked. If dating means I want to spend all my free time with you and get irrationally angry when other dragons get too friendly, then yes. That's pretty much dating. Now Jake stood on the observation deck, watching stars streak by. They were still 2 months from the Dragon Confederation capital, but he wasn't thinking about the destination anymore. You're brooding, Kyra said, joining him. Thinking, Jake corrected. About what happens when we reach your capital. Do I just go home? Kyra's tail wrapped around his waist, a gesture of comfort he'd gotten used to. Is that what you want? I don't know. 2 months ago, I couldn't wait to get back. Now you've been claimed by a dragon and corrupted our entire crew with human concepts like movie night and Casual Friday. Casual Friday was a hit, Jake defended. Even Captain Ethera participated. She wore 1 less medal. That's not casual. That's rebellious by dragon standards. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the universe pass by. Jake had learned to appreciate dragon silences. They didn't always need to fill space with words. Jake, Kyra said eventually, the captain wants to see you. All senior staff will be there. Should I be worried? No. Maybe. Actually, I'm not sure. The meeting was in the captain's ready room. All the department heads were there. Vex, Silent, Mira, Vex, and others Jake had come to know well. They all looked serious. Jake, Captain Ethera began. We have a decision to make. In 2 months, we reach the capital. You can return to Earth as planned. Or, the council has been monitoring our reports about you. They're very interested in establishing formal human-dragon relations. They've offered you a position. Jake's mind went blank. What kind of position? Cultural liaison. You'd help re-establish connections between our species. Travel between dragon and human space, facilitating understanding. That's huge. There's more, Vex added. Several dragon research vessels have already requested you specifically. Word has spread about the human who plays games and explains movies and makes everyone laugh. You become famous, Mira said. The human who tamed dragons. I didn't tame anyone, Jake protested. No, Captain Ethera agreed. You befriended us. That's rarer and more valuable. Jake looked around the room at these beings who had become friends, colleagues, family even. Then, he looked at Kyra, who was trying very hard to keep her expression neutral. Can I think about it? Of course. But Jake, Earth has been contacted. They're aware of your situation. The human government is very interested in reopening relations with dragons. So no pressure, except for the fate of interspecies relations resting on my shoulders. Exactly, the captain said with dragon humor. No pressure at all. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Messages from Earth started arriving, from government officials, from scientists, from media outlets. Everyone wanted to know about Jake's experience with the dragons. His sister sent a video message. Jake, you absolute idiot. You accidentally started a diplomatic revolution. Also, your cat is fine, but he's gained weight. When you get back, if you get back, you're explaining everything. The dragon crew, meanwhile, had begun preparing presentations about human culture for the capital. Jake helped where he could, correcting misconceptions and adding context. No, we don't actually eat our young when food is scarce, he had to explain to one researcher. But this historical text says, that's satire. Humor. Like when Vex jokes about recycling inefficient crew members into fuel. That's a joke? The researcher asked, looking worried. 1 month from the capital, 3 more dragon ships rendezvoused with them. Not just to meet Jake this time, but to escort the Crimson Wing. His accidental boarding had become an event of historical significance. Captain Corax was aboard one of the escort ships. He called Jake to a private meeting. Human, the massive black dragon began. I've been thinking about our first meeting. When you threatened to eat me, I was testing you. Old warrior tradition. You passed. By not running away. By joking in the face of death. Very human. Very brave. Corax leaned forward. If you take this liaison position, you'll need protection. Dragons who don't agree with reunification might see you as a target. Are you threatening me again? I'm offering to be your bodyguard. Jake stared. You want to protect me? Someone needs to. You have no scales, no claws, no fire. You're like a hatchling with big dreams. Thanks, I think. Also, Corax added, looking almost embarrassed, I've been watching your movies. This action hero concept is fascinating. Humans who fight impossible odds with clever tricks and determination. I want to learn more. Let me get this straight. One of the most feared dragon warriors wants to be my bodyguard because he likes action movies. When you say it like that, it sounds foolish. No, Jake said quickly. It sounds like the beginning of a beautiful friendship. As they approached the capital, Jake spent more time with Kyra. Their relationship had deepened beyond cultural exchange. She taught him to read dragon body language, and he taught her human idioms. They watched movies together and debated philosophy. She showed him dragon poetry, and he introduced her to human music. If you go back to Earth, she said one evening, what happens to us? I don't know, Jake admitted. Long-distance relationships are hard enough on the same planet. If you stay, then I'm the only human in dragon space. That's its own challenge. You wouldn't be alone, Kyra said firmly. You have me. You have the crew. You have every dragon you've met who considers you friend. When you put it like that, Jake, I need to tell you something. In dragon culture, claiming isn't casual. It's permanent. Or meant to be. I should have explained better before. Are you saying you want to marry me? I'm saying I want you in my life, whatever form that takes. If you stay, if you go, if you travel between worlds. I want to be part of your story. Jake took her clawed hand in his small human one. I want that too. However complicated it gets. 2 weeks from the capital, Earth sent an official message. They were sending a diplomatic ship to meet them at the dragon capital. Jake would help with first contact protocols. You'll be in history books, Vex said excitedly. The human who accidentally restarted human-dragon relations. Accidentally is the key word, Jake reminded her. The crew had started teaching him dragon formal protocols for the capital. How to bow, difficult without a tail for balance. How to address the council, with respect but not submission. How to handle ceremonial situations, mostly stand there and look human. You're overthinking, Vex said during a practice session. Just be yourself. That's what got us this far. Myself is nervous, Jake said. Good. Shows you understand the importance. But remember, you've already done the hard part. You've proved humans and dragons can be friends again. 1 week out, the entire crew gathered for movie night, a human tradition that had become ship routine. They watched an old Earth film about first contact between species. Unrealistic, Mira commented. The aliens learn English in 5 minutes. And they're always humanoid, Vex added. Where are the truly alien forms? Says the 8-foot dragon to the human. Jake pointed out. We're not alien. We're from Earth originally too. Ancient Earth, Silent corrected. Before humans evolved. We're more like very distant cousins. Really distant, Jake agreed, looking at their scales and wings. The movie ended with humans and aliens becoming allies. The dragon crew approved of the ending, though they had notes about the execution. When we make our movie about this, Kyra said, we'll get it right. Our movie, of course. The story of Jake the human and the dragon crew. It'll be a classic. Who plays me? You play you. It's documentary. 3 days from the capital, Jake formally accepted the liaison position. The decision felt right, even if it meant a completely different life than he'd planned. I'll need an office, he told Captain Ethera. On whatever ship will have me. The Crimson Wing will always have room for you, she said. Though I suspect you'll be traveling between many ships. And Earth? Eventually, when protocols are established. You'll be the bridge, Jake. The one who helps both species remember how to trust. The night before arrival, Jake couldn't sleep. He wandered the ship, finding crew members also awake with excitement. In the observation lounge, young Star and her friends were practicing human handshakes. Jake, Star called out. Are we doing it right? He spent an hour with them, refining their technique and teaching them new human greetings. They were so eager, so excited about meeting more humans eventually. In engineering, Vex was designing communication devices that would work better for human hands. Can't have our liaison struggling with dragon-sized equipment, she explained. In the mess hall, the chef was practicing human recipes from Jake's descriptions. Pizza is harder than it sounds, the dragon admitted. But I think I've got the concept. Jake found himself in the memory room, watching recordings of the past months. There he was on his first day, terrified and confused. There were the early, awkward meals, the language lessons, the slowly building friendships. Reviewing history, Kyra asked, joining him. Living it, Jake said. Look how far we've come. On screen, past Jake was teaching dragons to play cards, while past Kyra watched with amusement. My favorite memory, Kyra said, is when you stood up to Captain Corax. That's when I knew you were special. My favorite is when you claimed me, Jake said, even though I didn't understand it at the time. You still don't understand it fully, Kyra teased. Dragon bonds are complex. I've got time to learn. The final approach to the Dragon Confederation capital was spectacular. The planet itself was a work of art. Cities that grew like crystals, flying platforms that served as neighborhoods, technology, and nature in perfect balance. Home, several crew members said with longing. It's beautiful, Jake breathed. Wait until you see it up close, Kyra promised. The spaceport was massive with ships of every size and design. The Crimson Wing was directed to a special berth, where an honor guard waited. Remember, Captain Ethera said as they prepared to disembark, you're not just Jake anymore. You're the human who chose to stay with dragons. Your hope personified. No pressure, Jake muttered. All the pressure, the captain corrected with a smile. But you've handled worse. You handled us. The crew formed up around Jake as they exited the ship. He wore his modified uniform with pride, standing as tall as his human frame allowed among his dragon friends. The honor guard's eyes widened seeing him, but they maintained protocol. Behind them, Jake could see crowds gathering, dragons who had heard about the human and come to see for themselves. In the distance, a human diplomatic ship was landing. His species, come and meet him halfway. Whatever happens next, Kyra whispered, we did something amazing. We're not done yet, Jake said. This is just the beginning. As they walked toward the waiting delegation, Jake thought about that tired night 2 months ago when he'd stumbled onto the wrong ship. Best mistake he'd ever made. The dragons around him walked with confidence, no longer seeing him as other, but as one of them. And in the crowd, he could see curiosity replacing fear, interest replacing isolation. Two species, separated by misunderstanding, brought together by accident, and sustained by friendship. Ready, Jake? Captain Ethera asked as they approached the council chambers. Jake looked at his dragon family, thought of all the adventures ahead, all the bridges yet to build. I'm ready, he said. Let's make history. And together, human and dragons, they walked into a future that neither species had imagined, but both were ready to explore. The accidental passenger had become an intentional ambassador. The wrong ship had been the right choice. And somewhere in the space between Earth and Dragon space, two civilizations were learning to fly together again. Jake Thompson, who had just wanted to go home, had found something better, a purpose that spanned the stars, and friends who happened to be dragons. As Kyra's tail wrapped around him in support, and the crew stood ready to defend their human, Jake smiled. He was home. It just looked different than he'd expected. The story of the human who boarded the wrong starship would be told for generations. But for Jake, standing there surrounded by dragons who refused to let him go, it was just the first chapter of a much longer adventure. One that had started with a simple mistake and grown into something extraordinary. A human and dragons, writing a new story together among the stars.